14 deep fears people with narcissistic parents struggle with. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to grow up in a home where love is conditional and your every move is scrutinized? Imagine a childhood where you're constantly walking on eggshells, unsure whether a wrong move will send your parent into a fit of rage or disappointment. For many, this is the reality of growing up with narcissistic parents. Narcissistic parenting is emotionally taxing and leaves a profound impact that extends into adulthood. But what does it do to a person? What kind of deep, often unspoken fears linger with those who grew up under such toxic conditions? In this video, we're going to dive into the 14 deep fears that people with narcissistic parents often struggle with. These fears are not just superficial or fleeting. They are ingrained in the fabric of their lives and have shaped how they view themselves, the world, and their relationships. Whether you're someone who grew up with a narcissistic parent or someone who's simply curious about the long-term effects of this kind of emotional abuse, stay tuned. By the end, you'll gain a deeper understanding of what these individuals face every day. So let's explore these fears in detail. Fears that aren't always obvious, but deeply affect the way people behave, think, and interact with the world. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you find it insightful. Your support helps spread awareness about narcissistic abuse and its lasting effects. Now, let's jump in and uncover the 14 deep fears that haunt people with narcissistic parents. 1. Fear of not being good enough. One of the most prevalent and enduring fears carried by individuals raised by narcissistic parents is the fear of never being good enough. Narcissistic parents are often quick to impose unrealistically high standards on their children, demanding perfection in everything they do. No matter how much effort the child puts in, it is never quite enough to meet their parents' expectations. This constant pressure to excel can leave the child feeling inadequate, regardless of their actual accomplishments. Over time, the child learns that their worth is conditional and directly tied to their ability to meet these impossible standards. As these children grow up, this ingrained sense of inadequacy follows them into adulthood, where it manifests in various areas of life, such as relationships, work, and even friendships. They may constantly feel like they are on the edge of failure, or that they are not measuring up to the expectations of others. This fear of never being good enough can be paralyzing, leading them to second-guess their decisions, question their abilities, and even avoid taking risks for fear of disappointing others. The deep-rooted belief that they are destined to fall short, no matter how hard they try, becomes a barrier that hinders their potential. As adults, people with narcissistic parents often find themselves trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and insecurity, fearing that they will eventually be exposed as a fraud or unworthy of love and success. This fear can manifest in their professional lives, where they may constantly seek validation and approval from others, unable to trust their own judgment. In relationships, they may feel like they are not deserving of affection or connection, always questioning whether they are truly valued or simply tolerated. The pressure to prove themselves worthy of love and acceptance can be overwhelming, and many may resort to overcompensating or perfectionism in an attempt to avoid being exposed as inadequate. This deep-seated fear, instilled by narcissistic parents, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that continues to shape their lives in ways they may not even fully understand. 2. Fear of rejection. Narcissistic parents thrive on having control over their children, using it as a means of maintaining power and dominance within the family dynamic. One of the most damaging ways they exert this control is by constantly making their children feel unworthy of love, affection, or approval unless they meet the parents' specific expectations and perform to their liking. This conditional love creates an environment where the child feels as though their value is only validated when they are fulfilling the parent's desires or demands. In such an environment, the child quickly learns that their worth is not inherent, but rather contingent upon their ability to satisfy the narcissistic parent's ever-changing needs. This sets the stage for a deep and pervasive fear of rejection that the child carries with them well into adulthood. As these children grow up and begin to navigate the adult world, this ingrained fear of rejection manifests in many aspects of their lives. They become hypersensitive to even the slightest hint of disapproval from others, whether it comes from friends, partners, or coworkers. This heightened sensitivity to criticism or rejection leads to a constant state of anxiety, where they are perpetually worried that a minor mistake or misstep will result in their abandonment or being cast aside. The fear of being rejected or judged harshly, as they were by their narcissistic parent, looms over them in almost every interaction. In relationships, they may excessively seek reassurance from others, constantly wondering if they are loved or valued, while in professional settings, they may overperform or avoid taking risks out of fear that one failure will lead to rejection or failure. This constant fear reinforces feelings of unworthiness, as they subconsciously begin to believe that they are not good enough to be truly accepted or loved unless they meet the impossible standards set by those around them. Ultimately, this cycle of fear and self-doubt can lead to emotional exhaustion, isolation, and a deep sense of inadequacy, as they continue to seek validation that they may never fully receive. 3. Fear of emotional intimacy. Growing up with narcissistic parents often means emotional neglect or manipulation. Children of narcissists learn not to trust others with their feelings because their emotional needs were never met or were constantly used against them. This can lead to a deep fear of emotional intimacy in adulthood. They may struggle to open up or share vulnerable aspects of themselves, constantly pushing people away out of fear that being emotionally open will lead to betrayal or rejection. 4. Fear of being controlled. The narcissistic parent uses control as a primary tactic for maintaining dominance over their child. Narcissistic parents often manipulate their children through guilt, shame, and emotional blackmail, teaching them that they are powerless and must obey. As adults, these children carry a deep fear of being controlled by others. This fear manifests in their relationships and work environments, where they may resist authority or struggle with obedience, fearing that any sign of submission will lead to exploitation. 5. Fear of conflict. In a household dominated by a narcissistic parent, conflict often leads to emotional warfare. A narcissist will escalate minor issues into major confrontations, using guilt and aggression to manipulate their child into submission. As a result, children of narcissists often grow up fearing conflict. They may go to great lengths to avoid confrontation, even if it means suppressing their own needs, opinions, or desires. They fear that expressing anger or frustration will lead to dire consequences, such as emotional outbursts or total withdrawal of love. 6. Fear of being invalidated. A narcissistic parent often invalidates their child's feelings, making them feel as though their emotions don't matter. This leads to a profound fear of being invalidated by others in adulthood. People with narcissistic parents are hyper-aware of how others respond to their emotions and opinions. They worry constantly that if they express themselves, others will dismiss their feelings or tell them they're overreacting, which triggers a deep sense of insecurity and self-doubt. 7. Fear of abandonment. Because narcissistic parents often withhold love and affection as a form of control, their children develop a persistent fear of abandonment. As children, They never knew if or when they would be good enough to receive their parents' approval. This fear of abandonment lingers into adulthood, causing them to be overly anxious in relationships. They may cling to partners or friends out of fear that they'll be left alone, or they may sabotage relationships to protect themselves from the anticipated hurt. 8. Fear of being exploited. Growing up with a narcissistic parent often means being used for the narcissist's gain. Narcissists have no qualms about taking advantage of their child's time, energy, or even their love without offering anything in return. This exploitative behavior leaves deep scars, and as adults, these individuals often fear being exploited by others. They may struggle with trust, constantly on guard for signs that someone is trying to take advantage of them, even in situations where it's not warranted. 9. Fear of being criticized. Criticism from a narcissistic parent is often harsh, unfair, and unrelenting. Narcissistic parents are quick to tear their children down and make them feel inferior, often offering praise only when it suits their own agenda. As a result, people raised by narcissistic parents develop a deep fear of criticism. Even constructive feedback from others can trigger feelings of inadequacy, leading them to believe they are failures or that they will never be able to meet others' expectations. 10. Fear of being seen as weak. Narcissistic parents often view vulnerability as a weakness and will exploit their child's moments of weakness to further their own agendas. This creates a deep fear of being seen as weak, both emotionally and physically. Children of narcissists are taught that showing any kind of vulnerability makes them susceptible to manipulation or ridicule, so they go through life hiding their true emotions and struggles, fearing judgment from others. 11. Fear of not being loved. Since narcissistic parents often provide love only when it is earned or when it suits their needs, children grow up with the belief that love is conditional. As adults, this belief manifests as a deep fear that they will never truly be loved for who they are. They may struggle with accepting love from others, always questioning whether it's genuine or if they are simply being tolerated. This fear of unworthiness prevents them from fully opening up to others, even when they know they deserve love and affection. 12. Fear of being ignored. A narcissistic parent often disregards their child's needs and feelings, creating a sense of invisibility for the child. As a result, people raised by narcissistic parents develop a profound fear of being ignored or overlooked. In adulthood, they may become anxious in situations where they feel unnoticed or unheard, whether at work, in relationships, or in social settings. This fear stems from their childhood experience of being emotionally disregarded or minimized. 13. Fear of losing control. Children of narcissists are often trained to be obedient and compliant, and their actions are frequently dictated by the whims of the narcissistic parent. This creates a deep fear of losing control, particularly in situations where they feel helpless. As adults, they may develop a need for perfectionism and an obsessive desire to control their environment to avoid the feeling of vulnerability. Losing control, to them, equates to being at the mercy of someone else's manipulation or rejection. 14. Fear of being unsuccessful. Finally, many children of narcissistic parents fear being unsuccessful, not just professionally, but in every aspect of life. Narcissistic parents often place unrealistic expectations on their children, pushing them to achieve greatness, but offering little support or acknowledgement. These children grow up with the fear that they will never measure up, and that failure, whether real or perceived, will lead to punishment or rejection. This fear often leads to burnout as they push themselves relentlessly, driven by an overwhelming need to prove their worth. If any of these fears resonate with you, it's important to remember that healing is possible. These fears are not a reflection of your worth, but rather the legacy of growing up in a narcissistic environment. Recognizing them is the first step toward reclaiming your power and working through the trauma. If this video helped you gain insight into the struggles faced by those with narcissistic parents, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who may benefit from hearing this message. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are not alone. Why even the smartest people fall for narcissistic abuse. Have you ever wondered why someone who is sharp, self-aware, and perceptive could fall into the hands of a narcissist? It's a baffling paradox, especially when it seems like a person with high emotional intelligence or life experience should be immune to manipulation. But time and time again, we see that even the most intelligent people, the ones who seem to have everything figured out, can fall prey to narcissistic abuse. Why does this happen? How can a manipulative personality type overpower someone's mental defenses? In this video, we'll dive into the nuances of narcissistic abuse, exploring how narcissists employ tactics that not only deceive, but also entrap, even those who pride themselves on being analytical, rational, or emotionally secure. By the end of this video,